Beijing has said there are three major events taking place in China this year: the return of Hong Kong, the 15th Party Congress, and the damming of the Yangtze River here at the Three Gorges, a milestone in the construction of the biggest hydroelectric project in the world. I'm Robert Stern in Hubei Province, central China. Welcome to this CNBC special report on this massive and controversial mega project. Its supporters see it as a symbol of national pride, an engineering marvel that will virtually eliminate the curse of flooding and generate vast quantities of cheap, clean, renewable energy. Its critics see it as a Stalinist white elephant that won't work, will disrupt the lives of millions, and could create an environmental catastrophe. The Three Gorges Dam has become a potent symbol of China's political development, as well as its remarkable economic and technical progress. As this massive project approaches its 2009 completion date, it will only attract more attention as China continues its historic transition. But first, a look at the river itself. The Yangtze, as it's known outside China, or Changjiang, the Long River as it's known to the Chinese, is the world's third largest river. From its source in the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau, it flows more than 6,000 kilometers through the towering Three Gorges, past the dam site, and down to the sea at Shanghai. It divides the wheat-eating north of China from the rice-eating south, and its rich floodplains sustain hundreds of millions of people. But as well as bringing plenty, the Yangtze also regularly brings devastation. For those living along the Yangtze, death and destruction from floods have been a fact of life for thousands of years. 140,000 died in 1931, when the waters inundated Wuhan's customs house. The river has left its mark on public buildings and on monuments honoring those who died defending the complex system of levees. And the job's getting tougher. As the Yangtze deposits more sediment, embankments have to be built higher. Over many of the river's most populated stretches, peak water level is as much as 17 meters above the surrounding land. When the Ming Dynasty residents of Shashi built this pagoda to pacify the river dragons that regularly inundated their homes, they built it on top of the river embankment. Over the past 450 years, their descendants have had to raise the embankment a further 10 meters in order to save themselves from the same fate. Now China says it's found a way to end the relentless devastation.
The
basic purpose of the Three Gorges project is flood control. You can say this is the indispensable precondition to developing the Yangtze. We have no other choice.
But the Three Gorges Dam is designed for more than flood control. As well as limiting floods to once per century, it's meant to improve navigation, developing China's southwest, and to generate power. Its 18-megawatt plant is nearly 9% of China's current total capacity. But critics say the dam isn't about flood control, navigation, or energy. It's all about politics. They challenge the technical basis for all Beijing's claims, saying numbers have been manipulated for non-scientific motives.
Did you have a chance to take a look at our National Geographic article on the Three Gorges?
Hydrological engineer Philip Williams is one such critic.
It's not a dam that will solve flood control problems on the Yangtze. It is a monument to the previous leadership of the Communist Party of China.
When Premier Li Peng, a Soviet-trained engineer and strong project supporter, inaugurated construction, it was in an atmosphere of intense patriotic pride. All critics saw was a Stalinesque obsession with scale and the culmination of decades of systematic suppression of any opposition.
2 or 3 generations of critics of the Three Gorges Dam have been persecuted, dismissed from their jobs, branded as dissidents, and the latest, the most recent example, of course, is Dai Qing.
Dai Qing, an engineer-turned-journalist, has been the focus of Chinese opposition to the dam. She published a collection of articles by Chinese scientists whose conclusions differed from those of the official review body. These hydrologists, engineers, and social scientists say their opinions were not only ignored, but suppressed, their findings politically inconvenient to old-guard communists attracted by the project's scale and symbolism.
That reporter Dai Ching, she doesn't know anything about engineering or about the environment. She did it for political motives. I think she's a political clown. The process was totally transparent.
Dai's efforts to kill the project were dashed when China's parliament approved it in 1992, albeit with an unprecedented number of no votes. But with 12 years before scheduled completion, opponents believe future Chinese leaders could change their minds. Dan Beard used to head the US government agency responsible for big dams.
So political support for the project is weak at best. If the real numbers were made available, there's no doubt in my mind that this project would never be built.
Will the project stop in mid-construction? Right now, I can't see any sign of that happening.
Chinese officials had been trying to control the Yangtze for 2,500 years. Today's generation is determined to see through their latest and most ambitious attempt. After the break, we'll take a closer look at the Three Gorges project itself. How will it work and how will it be paid for? No one disputes the severity of the Yangtze's devastating floods, nor China's urgent need for non-polluting power generation. But whether this enormous dam is really the best solution to these problems is a more controversial question. So, what exactly is being built here, and how will it work? Trucks don't come much bigger, but these 77-ton monsters are still dwarfed by the scale of the Three Gorges project. They've transformed a quiet stretch of river just downstream from the famous cliffs into a vast complex of digging, dumping and drilling. But with such a huge site and more than a decade to completion, it's hard to see what's actually being built here. This model shows the main features: a 2-kilometer wide, 185-meter high barrier housing 26 giant generating units, a central spillway nearly 500 meters long to release floodwater, a 2-way 5-stage ship lock for commercial traffic, and a ship elevator for tourist boats. Engineers throughout China are working on the dam design. This 1/50th scale model in Wuhan simulates the Yangtze's flow dynamics. Next door, workers clear up mock sediment made from coal dust after another experiment modeling siltation buildup. Project engineers are confident they've covered all the technical angles.
All the project's major technical issues have been discussed by international experts, not just Chinese ones. So many questions are very well understood.
Over the 7 decades since the idea of damming the Yangtze was first mooted, China has spent vast amounts of money and engineering expertise in researching the Three Gorges project. But not all dam experts believe the design they finally came up with is the best solution, or even that it will work at all.
One of the most disturbing aspects of the Three Gorges Dam project is that in many instances it is an experimental technology. And particularly in this crucial issue of sedimentation and the attempt to control sedimentation.
Controlling sedimentation is the key technical challenge to damming the silt-laden Yangtze. The Three Gorges design has tunnels at the dam base. These open during flood season to flush away the accumulated silt. Any failure or underestimate of silt volume could wreck all the dam's functions. Reservoir capacity would diminish, reducing flood control capability. Turbines would choke up, cutting power generation. And Chongqing Port would fill in, blocking navigation.
There's no problem for sedimentation. We've built several dams on the Yellow River using this technique, like the Sanmenxia Dam, and they've all succeeded.
But critics say the Sanmenxia Dam actually silted up within 2 years.
In the dam building world, the Sanmenxia Dam is regarded as a huge fiasco of sediment management.
With engineers disputing the efficacy of what has been built, it's no surprise they clash on what will be built. For example, the dam's navigation system features world firsts, like the 5-stage ship lock and the 120-meter long ship elevator, 50% larger than the biggest built. Some engineers, like this member of a Canadian team that concluded the dam was feasible, say they're simply extensions of proven technology.
Ship lock and the dam could be handled with our current knowledge of engineering.
Others see the project's ambitious scale as entering uncharted and dangerous waters.
That learning curve is being ignored. It's assumed that there's going to be no problems, that this is established technology. It is not.
Three Gorges engineers now have the chance to prove their theories. Opponents still hope they're never put to the test. But meanwhile, each truckload of earth is one more step towards turning the blueprints into reality. Engineering isn't the only problem facing the dam builders. They also have to find the money to finance this massive undertaking. They say most of the funding will be provided by China itself, but money from overseas will play its part too. 40 kilometers downstream from the Three Gorges project site is the Gorges Dam. It's a trial version of its giant upstream neighbor, and its hydropower will help pay the Three Gorges bill. The official budget is 200 billion renminbi, around 25 billion US dollars. Beijing stresses this isn't so much, spread over a 17-year construction period, and says the project is running under budget.
Do I believe those numbers? Absolutely not. Every large dam project that was ever constructed in the United States had certain things in common. The first is that the benefits of those projects were always overblown by the project proponents. And the costs of those projects were always underestimated. And there is nothing, in my experience in over 25 years in this business, to lead me to believe that Three Gorges is going to be any different.
China says it can provide most of the money itself and has put numbers on the funds it can raise from the Gorges Dam, a national energy surcharge, Chinese bank loans, and revenue from the Three Gorges project itself, slated to start selling power in 2003. But no loans from the World Bank, so active in many similar Chinese projects. That's because China never asked.
We thought the Three Gorges project may cause a lot of debate, and the World Bank application process is very petty. If we'd applied for a World Bank loan when the project was approved, it would never have gone ahead.
There's another upside to not seeking funding from overseas aid organizations. China's decision to go it alone means it won't be hostage to the kind of environmental impact scrutiny that has delayed or killed similar megaprojects elsewhere. But there are other sources of overseas financing. Like export credit. Foreign firms are supplying $750 million worth of equipment. All successful bidders had their government's financial backing. American companies didn't bother bidding after the US Exim Bank refused support on environmental and human rights grounds. Beijing isn't ruling out overseas bond or equity issues, seeing no problem in selling the project as a commercially viable venture.
The Three Gorges project has a huge potential return. No project in the world can make a profit in such a short time. It will be completed in 2009, and our debt can be completely repaid by 2015.
Bankers we spoke to were skeptical about these claims, saying foreign clients wouldn't invest in the project without state guarantees. But none would go on the record, citing the sensitivity of the Three Gorges issue and fears that negative comments could affect their China business. But they pointed out China doesn't need to go to the market. Beijing could channel general loans to the project, issue domestic bonds, or dip into its huge foreign currency reserves. That would mean never putting its claim that the dam is economical to the market test, but a much smoother ride. Another threat to the budget is corruption. Only 55% of the budget is for construction. The rest goes towards resettling those whose homes will be submerged. With the flooding of the reservoir comes a flood of money and temptation for local officials. There have already been cases of misused funds. The project boss acknowledges the danger, but says it's now under control.
Of course, corruption is unavoidable, but anyone who's committed a crime has been replaced.
So, as China ensures anyone jeopardizing the Three Gorges project pays the price, it pursues its efforts to foot the bill on its own. Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at the dam's impact on the environment and on the people who are going to have to move. Chinese Premier Li Peng, the driving force behind the Three Gorges Dam, has said the key to the project's success or failure is not in the engineering or financing, but in the resettlement issue. What will happen to the unprecedented numbers of people who will have to be moved out of the reservoir area is a key concern about this project. And this concern is every bit as strong outside China as it is within the country. Mrs. Lu may not have many more potato crops to harvest in her family fields close by the Yangtze. They'll all be underwater when the 600-kilometre-long reservoir starts filling in 5 years' time. She'll have to move, but says she's unconcerned.
We'll go wherever the nation wants us to go.
Mrs. Lu will be one of 1.3 million relocatees, the world's biggest resettlement program by far. Reason enough for concern, say some.
The history of population relocation programs, especially to make way for dams around the world, has been fraught with controversy. It is highly susceptible to giving rise to various sorts of human rights violations. The likelihood of things going wrong is extremely high.
The potential for social turmoil if resettlement goes wrong is underlined by its sheer scale. When the reservoir fills, this clock tower will become an island, and this bridge will only just clear the water. So where will all the people go? Officials aren't ruling out the possibility that some may move to remote, underpopulated areas like Xinjiang or the northeast. But they say the vast majority of riverside communities, like Wushan, will simply move uphill. This town of 60,000 will disappear completely when the reservoir starts to fill in 2003. In the next 5 years, everyone living down here will have to move to the new town they're building for themselves up there. New houses, new factories, new roads. The construction frenzy is all part of the project's developmental relocation policy. Giving the local economy such a boost, people will want to move.
The areas we are preparing for resettlement will be better than where people are now. People are generally willing to move.
There's certainly room for improvement. The Three Gorges region is among China's poorest, the lack of development partly due to the threat of the dam being built and submerging any investment. But moving entire communities uphill means more people on less land, and less fertile land than that enriched by the silt-laden Yangtze. Local officials have embarked on a mass program of upgrading previously uncultivated hilltops, which they say will make up for the loss of the riverside land. But it's also an effort to prepare the psychological ground for a smooth relocation.
Chinese peasants are very realistic. They need to see something before they believe it. So we have to give them something to see.
But in the end, those living below the reservoir level have no choice but to move. And, say human rights activists, no chance of voicing their opinions.
There is no apparent room being allowed by the government for representative groups from among these million-plus relocatees to express their concerns, to negotiate terms of compensation, where they're to be moved to, and so forth.
If you say we are not transparent, you don't understand us. As far as resettlement is concerned, we are very transparent, overseas and internally, from top to bottom.
Maybe not perfectly transparent. This brickmaker will have to move. He explained the compensation system, a job for those under 45 and cash for those over 45 like himself. But that's not official policy. Resettlement is another version of a familiar debate. What critics see as a human rights issue, Beijing sees in terms of economic development.
Basically, if the local economy is developed, resettlement is easy. If it isn't, resettlement will be a problem.
Despite its huge scale, the Three Gorges project is the Chinese government's dilemma writ small. To avoid massive social unrest, it must convince relocatees life will be better. But by raising expectations too high, it could create a reservoir of discontent in the future. The fate of the people displaced by the reservoir may be the most immediate and politically sensitive impact of the Three Gorges project. But the dam will also have a permanent and profound effect on the environment. Workers at the Wuhan Botanical Institute pay two species they're breeding particular attention. In a few years, this will be their only home in the world. Adianthum remiforme and Myricaria laxiflora are among the rarest of the 500+ species that will disappear when the reservoir fills. The Chinese sturgeon has a slightly better chance. There are about 1,000 of these living fossils, the world's biggest freshwater fish, left in the wild. This research centre has succeeded in breeding them artificially. Despite the precarious grip this Class 1 endangered species has on life, researchers are confident its survival post-dam is just a matter of money.
I believe the sturgeon protection measures will definitely be successful. All we need is for the government to pay close attention and guarantee the research budget.
Three Gorges officials say initiatives such as this show their seriousness in addressing the environmental impact of large dam construction. But few environmentalists believe green issues are at the top of the dam builders' agenda.
I think in terms of the overall project, ecology comes out very near the bottom, unfortunately. But at the same time, I think one neglects ecology at a cost, and it's not simply a matter of people saying these are nice, rare, pretty animals and plants that we need to look after. It's a much more fundamental thing than that, that we're basically looking towards trying to safeguard the life support system for large numbers of people in parts of China.
Project officials stress the dam's environmental benefits.
Everyone knows hydroelectric power doesn't pollute the air or the environment.
Beijing says the dam's downstream impact will be positive, reducing ecological damage from flooding and improving water quality. Many ecologists dispute that, saying lower flood levels could cause damage as far away as Shanghai, eroding coastline and increasing saltwater intrusion, polluting the city's drinking water. They say changes in water flow could harm wildlife and fisheries throughout the Middle Yangtze floodplain, especially two major drainage lakes, Dongting and Poyang. Project officials stress the dam's environmental benefits.
Everyone knows hydroelectric power doesn't pollute the air or the environment.
Beijing says the dam's downstream impact will be positive, reducing ecological damage from flooding and improving water quality. Many ecologists dispute that, saying lower flood levels could cause damage as far away as Shanghai, eroding coastline and increasing saltwater intrusion, polluting the city's drinking water. They say changes in water flow could harm wildlife and fisheries throughout the Middle Yangtze floodplain, especially two major drainage lakes, Dongting and Poyang.
Should know any problem on this species. We have done some special study on these issues.
But one ecologist who spent years working with forestry officials around Poyang says that's news to him and to his local colleagues.
If such studies have been done even within China, perhaps they're not very well known either.
Like so many controversies surrounding the Three Gorges project, the environmental debate becomes more about political process than technology, a matter of faith rather than objective analysis of the dam's impacts.
I think it's one of these things that until you actually build it, you're not really going to know how severe they are.
I feel quite confident that the environmental issues should be no problem for the Three Gorges project. But it's a long process.
And throughout this long process, the Three Gorges project will continue to be a focus and reflection of China's modernization, its technical prowess, financial power, economic needs, and political maturity. In this watershed year for China's development, the country's biggest engineering project since the Great Wall is more than ever a microcosm of national progress. And that's our CNBC special report on the Three Gorges Dam project. I'm Robert Stern. Thanks for joining us.